Hey, today I've got stories from Reddit that prove the scariest things in life aren't in horror movies. They're in the comments section. Subscribe for more, and let's go. I found a photograph in my grandmother's things that prints a different face every single time. I've printed it 5 times, and I recognize 2 of the faces. There's a particular kind of wrongness that hits when you're forced to question what your family was hiding. Not the sad kind, the unsettling kind. The kind that makes you regret opening dusty boxes in the attic. The kind that follows you for months. What follows is a story about a locked photograph and the impossible questions it raised. My grandmother passed 3 months ago. I was going through her things in the attic when I found a locked wooden box buried under some old quilts. Inside was a single photograph, sepia-toned and brittle, wrapped in what looked like prayer cloth. The photo showed a woman from maybe the 1920s, dressed formally in a studio portrait pose. Stern expression, hands folded, gray background. I'd never seen this photograph before. My grandmother never mentioned it. But finding it hidden like that, wrapped with such care, made me feel like I'd stumbled onto something. I thought maybe it was a valuable antique or a historical piece, so I decided to digitize it properly. I scanned it on my printer scanner, a pretty standard all-in-one machine, nothing fancy. Saved the scan to my computer. Then I printed it out to see how it looked on actual paper, whether the sepia tones came through correctly. The print came out and I nearly dropped it. The photograph on the paper was not the woman from the original. Same pose, same formal dress, same gray background. Same dimensions, same sepia tone, but a completely different face. Not just different, unrelated. Different bone structure, different eyes, everything different. I checked the original photo again, still the woman from the scan. I ran the scan again, same result. I printed again, same different face. Here's the thing about truly impossible things. You don't accept them at first. You look for explanations, any explanation. You test them again. You assume some kind of error. Equipment malfunction, scanner issues, anything but the obvious. So that's what I did. I tested again. And that's exactly where the compulsion started. That's where it shifted from, this is weird, to, I need to understand this. That's where it became about more than just a photograph. But OP couldn't let it rest. That first impossible print was supposed to be a fluke, a scanner error, a defect in the printer, something explainable. So she decided to test it. The second print came out different again. Same sepia tone, same formal pose, same background, but an entirely different woman's face. Dark eyes, high cheekbones, different era of clothing. I stared at it for 20 minutes, trying to convince myself it was the same person. It wasn't. Then I printed it a third time. Third time was a man. Older, maybe 60, wearing what looked like a military uniform from decades ago. White-haired, stern expression. I sat there with 3 prints spread out on my desk and my hands started shaking. Not from fear yet, from something else. Compulsion. I printed it 4 more times that night, each one different. A younger man with a scar, a woman with styled hair, someone I couldn't quite make out, a child staring directly at the camera. By 3 a.m., I was researching the photograph itself, contacted a photography expert about sepia tone degradation and whether it could cause imaging errors in digitization. The expert said the paper dated to somewhere between 1910 and 1925 was consistent with degradation, but degradation wouldn't cause this. He asked if the scanner or printer was malfunctioning. I told him I'd test both with different images. And that's where the real obsession took hold. OP printed normal photos, tested the equipment with every image she could find. Everything worked perfectly, except for the one photograph. The sepia portrait wasn't malfunctioning. It was doing exactly what it was designed to do. And by morning, OP was no longer thinking about scanner errors or equipment failure. She was thinking about the faces themselves, what they meant, who they were. By the 4th print, OP had stopped pretending this was a scanner error. I printed it again Wednesday afternoon. I needed to know if the pattern would loop or if it was always new. The 4th face was a woman, maybe 60, dark hair going gray. I stared for 30 seconds before panic set in. I grabbed the first 3 prints from under my bed. My hands were shaking. It was the second face, older, the same woman as she'd looked 30 years later. I don't know how to explain what that felt like. The same person aging across 4 impossible printouts. A photograph supposed to be from the 1920s. That shouldn't happen. I spent that night going through my grandmother's things. I found her journals in a box I hadn't unpacked. The entry was dated 1992. I saw her again in the photograph today, but she's older now. I don't know if that's her future or someone else. I keep telling myself these are just faces, but grandmother used to say the photograph remembers. God help me, I think I know what she meant. The Reddit comments came fast, and some theories hit way too close to home. Seeing yourself in a photograph that shouldn't exist is one of the most textbook signs of being trapped in something. The fact that you saw yourself aged is even worse. That's not a scanning error. That's documentation of a future that might not be yours to choose. Okay, I've read like every paranormal story on here, and this is the one that's genuinely unsettling because it doesn't rely on jump scares or gore. It's just a photograph that breaks basic reality in the most mundane way possible. I hate this. The thing that gets me is that your grandmother clearly knew. She didn't destroy it. She hid it in a place you'd eventually look, like she wanted you to find it, but only if you were ready. That's deliberate. And that's when things got worse. Days later, Photo Print Paradox returned with an update. What she'd discovered in that 5th print was something that changed everything. I found my grandmother's diary, and I understand what the photograph actually is. I don't even know how to explain this without sounding insane. I printed it a 5th time last night, and I almost threw up when I saw it. The face looking back at me was mine. Not the me sitting at my desk right now. This was me, aged up about 15 years, maybe 40 instead of 25. I was wearing clothes I've never owned, standing in a place I didn't recognize. The expression on that future face was pure terror. But here's what made it so much worse. My best friend Sarah has been trying to have a baby. 3 years of trying. They just finished a fertility round last month, and we don't even know yet if it took. There might never be a baby. I looked back at the other prints. There was one face I'd never been able to place. I pulled up Sarah's childhood photos on Facebook, and there she was. Her daughter. The baby that doesn't exist yet. The child from a future that hasn't happened. The photograph isn't showing me the past. It's not pulling random faces from some database. It's showing me people who will exist. It's documenting a future that's already decided somewhere. And I'm standing in that future, terrified, in a place I've never been, at an age I haven't reached yet. The comment section erupted. A few voices cut straight through. The woman who hasn't been born yet detail just made me lose my mind. How do you know what she looks like if she hasn't been born? How did the photograph know? This isn't paranormal. This is worse. Stop. Do not print it again. Do not scan it again. Objects that cycle like this are not showing you random images. They're showing you a sequence. If it's hit 5 different faces and you recognize 2, something is controlling which faces appear and in what order. The moment it stops changing is the moment you should be most afraid. Exactly this. The fact that OP recognized faces on prints 2 and 3 suggests the photograph is pulling from her specific memory. It's not generating random faces. It's showing her people from her timeline, her life, her future. That's significantly more terrifying than if it were just a glitch. So OP stopped printing. The obsession broke that night. But stopping wasn't relief. It was surrender. Because by then, something else had changed. I found my grandmother's diary, and I understand what the photograph actually is. I found her diary in that locked box beneath the photograph itself. She had been tracking it for decades. Every entry fixated on the portrait. Every entry documented the faces. But then I saw the back of the photograph, in tiny, careful handwriting. Don't add to the collection. The diary made sense after that. My grandmother had printed it multiple times as a younger woman. Each print revealed a different face. Each face was someone she recognized. Then she wrote something that stopped me. Names. Names of people who weren't born yet when she printed those copies. People she couldn't possibly have known. Her 1987 entry reads, "If I print it again, I add myself to the collection. That is not a risk I'm willing to take." She locked it away, never printed it again, for 39 years until she died. I haven't printed it since I read that, but something shifted. I pulled the digital file onto 3 devices: laptop, phone, tablet. Same file. Different images on each screen. My laptop displays a woman from the 1950s. My phone shows a man in Victorian clothing. My tablet shows someone whose face keeps blurring whenever I focus on it. The photograph isn't just changing what it prints anymore. It's changing what it shows depending on who looks at it. And I'm terrified now that by opening those files, by digitizing it, by scanning and rescanning it, I've already added myself to whatever collection this is. The comment section immediately seized on the real question here. Your grandmother wrapped it in religious cloth and locked it away. She knew exactly what she was doing. The question is, was she protecting the photograph from being seen, or protecting everyone else from what it reveals? That's the thing about inherited curses, if that's even what this is. OP's grandmother spent her entire life saying no to the photograph. No more prints, no more documentation, no more additions to the collection. But OP couldn't resist. And maybe that was always part of the design. The photograph waits patiently for the next hand willing to hold it, the next person curious enough to push it just a little further. The question isn't whether OP can stop now. The question is whether OP was ever really in control of any of this. On to the next one. My coworker, 28 male, has been systematically imitating my speech patterns, and I think he's trying to replace me. I found his documentation. Reddit's r/let's not meet is where people share encounters that made them uneasy, the kind of stories where something feels off, but you can't quite name it. This one starts with a simple job scenario, a new hire shadowing a veteran, but it escalates into something deeply unsettling. I've been in marketing for 8 years. 3 months ago, my firm brought on a new coworker to shadow me during client calls. Eager, took notes, asked good questions. The first few weeks seemed normal. Then it started. He picked up my speech patterns. Not just vocabulary, everyone does that when shadowing someone. My laugh, the way I stretch vowels when excited, my nervous honestly before major points in a pitch, the exact cadence of my delivery. At first I thought it was natural, but it wasn't. Perfect, unnaturally perfect. By week 3 or 4, it wasn't coincidence. He was replicating things I didn't realize I did. The pause before pivoting to price, the uptick when building emphasis, even my hand gestures during calls. I watched him study my mannerisms like samples. Then my manager sat in on a call. Afterward, he looked confused and asked why I'd brought another person. He couldn't tell which voice was mine. A week later, a client emailed asking if I'd brought on a new assistant. They couldn't distinguish us. No one questioned if the voice was actually me. I was background noise in my own career. That's when the dread set in. When she realized this wasn't shadowing. This was something deliberate. Within a month, it became crystal clear this wasn't just shadowing anymore. What had seemed like admiration was something else entirely. OP realized she was being studied. Methodically, systematically, like someone was taking detailed inventory of everything that made her her. It was spreading beyond client calls. I'd catch him using my exact laugh, my nervous tick of saying honestly before major points, the way I stretched vowels. His pacing matched mine. The way he'd lean against the desk when thinking. A client called asking for the assistant from our last meeting because they felt more comfortable with her. The email said, "She explained things so clearly." They didn't realize they'd been talking to me. That's when I started documenting everything. Every instance, every gesture, every inflection. Notebooks filled with dates. Spreadsheets mapping when he used specific phrases and with which clients. I couldn't deny it anymore. This wasn't subconscious mirroring. This was intentional. No one acquires someone's exact cadence by accident. No one replicates a nervous laugh, the timing and breath pattern, unless they're intentionally studying the person. I felt I was disappearing. My professional voice, built over years, was being colonized by someone I'd tried to help. Clients stopped asking for me by name. My manager asked if I was okay because my energy seemed off. I hadn't changed, but everyone else had changed how they saw me. Like I wasn't the real version anymore. like I was the copy and he was becoming me. The most chilling part was realizing he wasn't just mimicking her, he was replacing her. Deliberately, methodically, every single day. Every refinement he made, every detail he perfected, every inflection he absorbed, each day he became a little more her, and she became a little less her. And she had documentation to prove it was all on purpose. The comments started flooding in, and they cut straight to the bone. People weren't calling this coincidence or shadowing anymore. They were naming it. The worst part wasn't even that he was copying me. It was watching my clients stop recognizing me. I started noticing the micro shifts. "Wait, are you the original?" one client actually asked me. The original? Like I was the knockoff. I document everything. Every call where he mimicked me, every time he hit that exact laugh, the specific pause he'd added before saying, honestly, like it was a trademark. But documentation felt like failure, like I was collecting evidence of my own erasure. The paranoia mounted. Was he planning to take my job? My clients? My relationships with account managers who now asked why they were getting two versions of the pitch? I couldn't sleep. I'd replay calls, hunting for moments where I sounded like myself and not like something he'd already absorbed and perfected. I felt like I was watching him become me in real time, and nobody seemed to care. That's what broke me, the silence. HR didn't see it. Management didn't see it. My manager just seemed confused about why there were suddenly two of me. Comments lit up calling it what it was. This is textbook predatory identity mirroring, often linked to personality disorders. The fact that he documented every step means he was fully aware this was wrong. That's not mimicry. That's calculated identity theft with intent to replace you professionally. Please document everything going forward, even after he's gone. If he tries to contact you or your clients, you have ironclad evidence of predatory behavior. This guy needs more than a job loss. He needs professional intervention. One comment came from someone who'd lived it. The file structure is what gets me. Implementation schedule? He was treating you like a hostile takeover target. This guy isn't just copying communication, he's studying you like you're a character to perfect and then inhabit. And that's where it got real. 2 weeks later, OP updated the post. He got hired at a competitor and tried it again. My replacement found his files on her first week. 2 weeks after finding his folder, dozens of audio files, every client call, time-stamped and organized. Then the documents. Cadence analysis, target speaker pattern recognition, vocabulary acquisition, high-frequency phrasings, tone mapping, pitch and stress patterns, verbal tics and quirks, implementation schedule, a spreadsheet tracking progress against a 6-month plan, exactly on schedule. I reported it to HR. They reviewed everything, called him in. He didn't deny it. Called it professional development. They fired him. Then they discovered his employment history. 2 previous companies, same evidence, same patterns. He'd done this twice before, just left, found another job, another target. A month later, he was hired at a competitor. My replacement, 3 weeks in, found his hidden folder on her drive. Same setup, same files. He hadn't even changed the template. The comments immediately grasped it. The fact that your clients couldn't distinguish between you and him is bone-chilling. He wasn't mimicking you to learn, he was mimicking you to become you in their eyes. That's a takeover attempt, not networking. Did he ever use his actual voice, or was it a full performance the entire time? Because if he's been doing this at multiple companies and HR found a pattern, he's a serial mimic. That's not a personality quirk, that's a pathology with a method. If this is documented at 2 previous companies, it's definitely pathology. This isn't someone who just picks up accents easily. This is a person who specifically targets coworkers, studies them like specimens, and has developed a repeatable system for identity absorption. The scariest part is that he's aware enough of what he's doing to hide it behind labels like professional development, but not aware enough to stop. He'll just move on, get hired somewhere else, and find a new target. Rinse and repeat. What strikes you is the system. He had documentation, timeline, implementation schedule. When HR caught him, he just left. Another company, another target. How many times has this worked? I transferred out of his division a month later. He was gone from the company within weeks. Safe. Except the thing he'd stolen from me didn't vanish with him. He got hired at a competitor and tried it again. My replacement found his files on her first week. 2 months passed. I was settling into my new department, trying to find my voice again. I'd start a client pitch and hear his cadence in mine, pause, and second-guess myself. Then my successor reached out. She was spooked. She'd found a shared drive folder buried deep in the system, with dozens of audio files, all labeled with her name. Files she'd never created. Transcripts, analysis docs. The same methodical breakdown he'd done on me. She went to HR immediately. They traced him to a marketing firm across town, same company that hired him 5 months prior. HR at my old firm called the new company, and here's what chilled me. They had the same evidence, same files, same 6-month implementation plan. Different voice target, same predatory system. He'd already moved on again by the time they figured it out. He'd absorbed one identity, discarded it, and was in the middle of absorbing another. I'll never know how many times he did this before me, or how many after. Comments flooded in immediately. The patterns people saw weren't random. This wasn't a quirk of professional development. This was a pattern hunter. If HR found a documented pattern across multiple jobs, this guy has a system he's refined. He's going to keep doing this to people, and he'll be better at hiding it each time. Someone needs to warn the industry. That was the thing that kept me up. He's still out there somewhere, learning new voices, refining his technique. The violation doesn't end when the person leaves. It becomes a template he carries to his next target, and there will be a next target. On to the next one. My sister has been stalking my ex's new wife for 4 years, and I finally found out how deep it goes. Sometimes the most disturbing discoveries happen completely by accident. I need to get this off my chest. 4 years ago, I broke up with my boyfriend. Call him James. It wasn't messy, we just grew apart. A year later, James got engaged to someone new, and they've been married nearly 3 years now. My sister Emma has always been intense and obsessive, way too intense. After my breakup, I noticed her asking weird questions about James and his new girlfriend. Not normal curious sister stuff, really strange questions about where they went, who they saw, what they did. I thought it was just her being nosy and changed the subject every time. Last week, I was backing up files to our shared cloud storage and found a folder in Emma's backup that wasn't labeled. I shouldn't have opened it, I know that now, but I did. One click and my stomach just dropped. There was a spreadsheet. 4 years of detailed tracking on James's wife. More than 400 entries. Dates, times, locations, routines broken down by day of the week. Every Tuesday at 6:15 p.m., gym. Wednesday afternoons, home alone. Thursday, lunch spots. But the margin notes, those made my blood run cold. Handwritten annotations in the cells. At home alone, vulnerable. No security system noted. Works late Fridays, wife home alone. This wasn't casual social media checking, this was systematic surveillance. 4 years of it. She's been watching this woman like a target. And that's when the full weight of what I was looking at really hit. This wasn't weird behavior or nosiness. This was a deliberate, methodical obsession spanning 4 years and documented in terrifying detail. I felt physically sick just staring at it. OP opened the first tab of the spreadsheet and her stomach dropped. The scope of what Sister had done became horrifyingly clear. The spreadsheet had tabs for every month going back 4 years. January 2022 to June 2026. Each month was broken down into weeks, each week into individual days. 7 columns. Date, time, location, weather, attire, who with, notes. Every entry was time-stamped down to the minute. 6:15 a.m., gym. 8:47 a.m., coffee at Brewed Awakening on 5th. 12:30 p.m., lunch with unknown male, blonde hair, expensive watch. 5:42 p.m., dry cleaning. 7:15 p.m., home. 4 years of this. The weather column had actual observations. Sunny, 64 degrees, or rainy, 38 degrees, not estimates. My sister had stood outside watching. Some notes sections had question marks. Others had chilling flags. One from last month. Alone at home, 8:15 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. Vulnerable window. Another. Routine break Thursday. New variable. I could see the patterns my sister had obsessively mapped over 4 years of dedicated surveillance. The wife went to the gym every single Tuesday and Thursday at exactly 6:15 a.m. Grocery shopping on Saturdays at 10 a.m. The husband left work at 7:30 a.m. and she left at 8:15 a.m. Wednesdays they went out together, dinner around 7 p.m. Weekdays from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m., the wife was completely alone in the house. My sister had spent 4 years systematically documenting a stranger's life. Every routine, every vulnerability, every defenseless moment. OP kept scrolling through the spreadsheet and realized it was just the table of contents. The inventory of 4 years of surveillance. It was like watching someone assemble a kill folder, except there was no kill. Just, what? Obsession? Revenge? Some twisted fantasy? The real horror was in the folders waiting below. The photographs. That's when the real sickness set in. What got to me was the margin notes. Not the raw data, but the annotations. Vulnerable appeared next to every entry. Gym, Tuesday, 6:15 p.m., alone. Home alone, vulnerable. Grocery store, unaccompanied. She wasn't just recording, she was flagging moments when this woman was exposed. The specificity was nauseating. Not Tuesday at the gym, but Tuesday, 6:15 a.m., Nike outfit, water bottle, always alone. Weather observations, cloudy, good lighting for photos. Route notes, same path Tuesdays, can intercept at CVS intersection if needed. If needed. 2 words that made me sick. 4 years in total secret. The ex-wife has no idea someone's mapping her vulnerabilities, plotting her schedule, cataloging her alone time. I felt complicit just by knowing. The spreadsheet had tabs January through December, year after year, all maintained and current. Most recent entry? 2 days ago. She hasn't stopped. Comments poured in from people who'd seen this pattern before. I watched a friend go through something similar. The person being stalked didn't find out until police showed up. That woman deserves to know someone is tracking her location and documenting her vulnerable moments. 4 years of escalating surveillance and she's only getting bolder. She drove 14 hours and photographed a stranger. What's next? This pattern doesn't reverse itself without intervention. This is a federal-level stalking case. The interstate travel, the surveillance photos, the detailed tracking, this is not a family drama anymore. This is a criminal investigation. You need to contact law enforcement before your sister escalates further. I know you're right. That's what makes this so terrifying. I keep telling myself it's a mental health issue, that she needs help, not handcuffs, that maybe we can fix this within the family. But then I look at those photographs from last week. Her literally sitting in a car outside this woman's workplace with a zoom lens. And I realize this stopped being fixable the moment she got on the interstate. 4 years, and she's never stopped. The detailed notes, the schedule mapping, the note about vulnerable. That's not a cry for help, that's a plan. I don't know if I can be the person who turns my sister into the police, but I also know that staying silent means I'm letting this happen. Even typing that makes me feel complicit. That moment of realizing you're complicit just by knowing, that's where OP got stuck. But last week, a second post came back. It was worse. She admitted to everything, and I found out why, and it's worse than I imagined. I found out she drove 14 hours across state lines to Fuck's workplace. She left at 6 a.m., got there by evening, and staked out the building. She parked 2 blocks away in a lot and waited. Hours. She brought an actual DSLR camera, not even her phone, and photographed Fuck leaving work at 5:47 p.m. Multiple shots from different angles. She documented which parking lot she used. She made notes in her phone about what Fuck was wearing and cross-referenced it to a yoga class outfit from months earlier. I still don't know how. When I confronted her, she didn't deny any of it. She got defensive and angry that I'd accessed her cloud account, like that was the violation here. And then she just confessed to everything. The drive, the photos, the camera across state lines, all of it. And then she said something that made my blood run cold. I needed to know if she was vulnerable outside the office too. That word, vulnerable. Not safe or alone, vulnerable. She was assessing prey. My own sister is stalking this woman like she's planning something. This isn't obsession anymore. This is criminal surveillance. This is a felony. The comments weren't sympathetic. Screenshot and back up that spreadsheet immediately, offline. Do not confront your sister again. The moment she realizes you know, she could delete evidence or do something worse. Talk to a lawyer first about your options. This is solid advice. OP, you've got maybe 24 hours before your sister figures out you accessed her cloud account or someone tips her off. Once she knows the jig is up, that evidence disappears and she has time to prepare a story or escalate. Get a lawyer on retainer and figure out your legal standing before you do anything else. I get it, she's your sister, but protecting her at this point means putting an innocent woman in danger. Stalkers escalate. The spreadsheet, the interstate travel, the vulnerable notes. This will not end well if you stay silent. The comment section had figured it out. OP wasn't facing a family problem. OP was sitting on a crime. So OP finally did it, confronted the sister directly. I sat her down and laid it all out. The spreadsheet, the tabs, the margin notes, all of it. She stared at me for a second, then just laughed. Cold. Yeah, I've been watching her, she said. So what? She didn't deny anything, didn't apologize, just got defensive and hostile. Why do you care? She stole you from me, she said. When I brought up the photographs, her jaw tightened, but she didn't back down. I was keeping tabs to make sure she wasn't dangerous. The delusion in that statement hit hard. She actually believed she was doing something reasonable. I told her it was illegal, that she'd crossed every line. She just said, I don't care anymore. Let's see what you'll do. And that's when I froze, because suddenly I had to make an impossible choice. 3 days later, OP came back with an update post. She admitted to everything, and I found out why, and it's worse than I imagined. I confronted my sister and she admitted to everything, but not the way I expected. She wasn't ashamed, she was angry. She told me she started watching The New Wife because she was convinced the woman had stolen me away from our family. But over time it became something darker. She confessed that she genuinely convinced herself the ex-wife was harmful, and that by documenting everything she was protecting people. She's built an entire narrative around her obsession. And here's what terrifies me. She doesn't think she's done anything wrong. In her mind, she's the hero. Now I have to decide. Do I report my sister to the police for stalking? Do I warn the ex-wife and shatter my family? Do I try to force her into therapy? None of the options feel right. All of them feel devastating. The comments on this one hit different. You're describing systematic harassment across state lines with photographic evidence. This isn't a personality flaw or mental health crisis to manage quietly. Your sister has committed crimes. Full stop. And that brings us to the end of this one, the kind of moral paralysis that has no good answer. On to the next one. I, 18 female, joined a mental health Discord group, and when we met in person, they wouldn't let me leave. There's a special kind of trap that looks like healing when you're desperate for help. So here's what happened. I, 18 female, was struggling hard with depression and had burned through therapists and fake feeling support groups. 6 months ago, I found a Discord server called The Healing Circle, and it was real. The moderators were warm, people showed up for each other, and I formed genuine friendships. For the first time, my illness didn't feel like a burden to hide. When the organizers proposed an in-person retreat weekend in April, group therapy, nature walks, face-to-face time with people I'd been talking to online for months, it felt like the next step. I was so excited I paid immediately, told my mom, and drove out buzzing. The facility was a rundown building in the woods with spotty cell service. When I arrived, things shifted fast. They collected our phones to minimize distractions. Then they asked for car keys to keep them safe in the office. Then an organizer casually said, "You're all registered for the full week program, activities through Sunday." I'd signed up for a weekend, 2 nights. My registration said April 13th to 15th. I showed them the printed copy. The organizer smiled and said there was confusion in the system, but the real healing takes 7 days. I asked for my keys back. I needed to call my mom about staying longer. "You're not ready to leave yet," she said, still smiling. That's when it hit me. I couldn't actually leave. And that's where it clicks into place. When she arrived that Friday afternoon, everything felt exactly like the Discord had promised. Warm, welcoming, genuine. The organizers were waiting. They took her phone to reduce distractions. They took her keys to keep the cars safe. They said the weekend would change her life. She had no idea they meant it literally. The first night is when it became impossible to ignore what was actually happening. There's something about the dark in the country. It's deeper than darkness in the city, more final. I went to my room and realized no signal, not even one bar. I figured it was just the location, but then I saw my car keys hanging on a key rack in an office. That part I hadn't agreed to. I tried to act normal at dinner. The other members weren't exactly chatty. When I mentioned I was excited to leave Sunday, the staff member overhearing me, Claire, put her hand on my shoulder. "That's just your resistance to healing," she said. "We'll work through it." That night, I couldn't sleep. My mom didn't even know where I was. Sunday felt very far away. The next morning, I woke up needing to call her. I found a landline in the hallway and asked if I could use it. The staff member was nice about it. "Of course, we just ask that you wait until evening phone time. Our therapeutic model asks for total immersion during the day." She smiled like she wasn't denying me anything, just rescheduling. That's when something broke. I didn't know what this place actually was yet, but I knew it wasn't what they said it was. The realization crept in slowly. It wasn't violence or screaming. It was politeness. It was concern masquerading as care. A closed door with a kind smile on the other side. And the worst part? Every single thing they said made sense if you didn't think too hard about it. If you didn't think about the keys, the phone, the way nobody could quite explain why they were still here. By day 2, the real agenda becomes clear. The morning sessions are labeled healing circles, but it's psychological pressure dressed in therapeutic language. The facilitators ask personal questions, then respond to doubt with statements like, "Your resistance shows how broken you are," or "Your defensiveness means you're not ready to trust the process." They reframe any pushback as proof you need more time with them. I watch the other attendees. Nobody asks about leaving anymore. The girl who tried on day 1, I'll call her Maya, just sits quietly, nodding along. When I catch her eye, she looks away. The staff keeps saying, "Your real family will understand once you've healed," but my actual family can't reach me, and somehow that lands differently. By day 3, the guilt tactics have worked. People aren't even asking to use the phone. They've internalized the message. Asking to leave means you're selfish, broken, not ready. Leaving early would hurt everyone here who's counting on you. I'm documenting everything. Timestamps, exact phrases, who said what. Because what's happening isn't therapy. It's systematic psychological breakdown, shame spiral by shame spiral. The comments section immediately recognized what was happening. This is textbook trafficking and psychological abuse. The "you're not ready to leave" script is exactly what predatory groups use to break down resistance. So grateful you're safe. Discord's moderation is a joke. They claim they don't allow recruitment for off-platform exploitation, but clearly aren't catching this stuff until people end up physically trapped. Then came the harder questions. 17 people trapped in one location. 17. And how many more are in similar operations they haven't found yet? That's what keeps me up at night. Most of the people they found are out now, but some of them were genuinely afraid to leave. The leaders had spent months convincing them the outside world was hostile and uncaring. A few are still in deprogramming therapy because the psychological damage runs deep. I can't imagine how many others are still out there in similar situations we don't know about. That evening, something OP overheard changed everything. The police showed me the network, and I wasn't their first victim, or their last. I'm sitting in a police station right now, and I keep shaking. Around 7 p.m. on day 3, I was walking back to my room when I heard staff talking in an office near the Commons. One of them said, "Marcus should be ready for graduation from the program in another month." Graduation? From a program nobody here knew they were actually in? I heard words like, members who completed their residential commitment, and that's when my brain short-circuited. This wasn't a retreat weekend. This wasn't even a week. These people were talking about members like they had months-long sentences. I found Kayla, the girl from Discord who convinced me to come, alone in her room. When I asked how long she'd actually been here, she started crying. 4 months. She's been here 4 months. She said the staff keep telling her she's not emotionally stable enough to leave yet, that she needs more time with the program, that going home now would be harmful to her recovery. She's terrified of pushing back because she thinks they'll isolate her worse. That's when I got it. This isn't a support group. This is an illegal prison dressed up in therapy language. The comment section erupted. Readers recognized exactly what OP was describing. Not a miscommunication, not a retreat mix-up. These groups specifically hunt for vulnerable people online because they know depressed teenagers are less likely to have strong outside support systems. They're preying on genuine pain. I've heard about 3 other operations using almost identical language and targeting methods. If the investigators haven't already, they need to check if these groups are coordinating online. You're describing a network, which is genuinely terrifying. If they're sharing recruitment tactics and vetting methods, they've probably trained each other on how to handle escapees and police inquiries. OP needs to push law enforcement to connect these cases. The use of mental health language to justify isolation and control is genuinely evil. "You're not ready" isn't therapy, it's coercion. This is cult behavior in 2026. What happened next moved very fast. Then came the 30 seconds that changed everything. I called my mom from that staff member's phone. Everything came pouring out in a rush. She didn't hesitate. She called police while I stayed on the line. The dispatcher said they were taking it seriously. Within 3 hours, police cars were pulling up outside. Officers moved through the facility. The organizers were arrested on the spot. When they did a full census of the property, they found 17 people living there. 17. Some had been trapped for months. One girl had been there a year. The staff had kept telling her she wasn't emotionally stable enough to leave. That was the trap. Fear, dressed up in care language. I was there 3 days. Another girl was there a year. I'm still processing that difference. Days later, OP posted an update. The police showed me the network, and I wasn't their first victim, or their last. Police showed me the network they'd uncovered. It made me sick. This wasn't just one operation, it was sprawling. Discord servers, Telegram groups, Instagram accounts, all using healing language, all feeding people into facilities where they disappeared. Investigators told me this operation had been running at least 3 years. 3 years of people going in and not coming out. Some thought they were paying for treatment. There are probably 5 or more similar networks operating right now that haven't been found yet. For every Discord police discovered, there are probably 5 they haven't. I'm testifying at trial. There will be more arrests. One comment went straight to the point. 17 people trapped in one location. 17. And how many more are in similar operations they haven't found yet? This is horrifying. Healing language is control language when predators wield it. Your safe space doesn't announce itself as a cage, it slowly becomes one. If an online community makes you uncomfortable, trust that. If they propose isolation from outside support, that's confinement dressed in a gentle voice. A community that has to trap you to keep you isn't one. 17 found that night. How many are still out there in traps undiscovered? OP is safe. The investigation continues. That is the last story for today.